Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Niagara University Center for Mindful Practices Conference. We are doing mindful conversations, mindful movement practices, Qigong. With us today is Wenlin Tan, and she will be presenting the power of creative cycle, the 5 elements, moving meditation for creativity and well-being.
Thank you so much, Susie. And thanks everyone for joining us today. I really appreciate that you have stayed on until the end of today. And I noticed that many of you have your video off. You might be feeling tired. I want to say that at any point of time, if you would like to be seen, if you would like to feel like you're in community, you're always very welcome to have your video on. Oh, okay. It looks like there was a small technical issue and the video went off. No worries. I'm back. I've been here. So I wanted to say that firstly, thank you so much for choosing to be here. I am a huge believer that there are no coincidences. Whatever shows up in the moment is, I believe, whatever we are needing in the moment. And before we dive into today's session will take roughly just under an hour. At any point of time, if the various different practices I offer, including the small presentation, if it doesn't resonate with you, if there's something else that you prefer to do, maybe you would like to lie down, you would like to rest instead of practicing, you're always welcome to do so. The most important thing is that you listen to your own inner guidance, your own body, your inner teacher. This is the most important. So I'm going to now share my slides. And there's going to be a combination of a little bit of theory, because I understand some of you might be new to Qigong and you might be new to the 5 elements, as well as what is called the creative cycle or the creation cycle. So I'll share a little bit about that, as well as a breath practice that will help you experience the 4 seasons and the 5 elements of your creative cycle. And then we'll dive a little bit deeper into the theory and how it can be applied, not just in our Qigong practice, but more importantly, in our daily lives. And with regards to our creative projects, with regards to our lifeline. And then towards the end, what we'll do is we'll then move into a movement meditation practice, a Qigong practice. And you are welcome to join in if you feel like. If you are really tired or if for any reason you prefer not to, you're always welcome to sit or lie down and observe. And also there will be recording, so you can always catch up on this later on. So now I will share my slides. Also, at any point of time, if my audio is not good, if you would like for me to make any adjustments, you're always welcome to let me know. So welcome to our presentation today. And this is a quick introduction. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. My name is Wenlin. I am a creative cycle as well as a mindfulness coach, and I teach various different modalities, including yoga, Qigong, somatics, mindfulness, coaching as well. So my background is originally in psychology, and I am from Singapore, and I am a native Chinese speaker, and I've been practicing these various different modalities for over 15 years right now. And my intention behind offering Qigong and various different tools, such as these health regulation and self-regulation tools, is really to support you to feel in flow and to optimize your creativity and productivity by harnessing the power of the creative cycle, as well as your natural bodily rhythms. So more about that later on. I will stop sharing for a moment, and if anyone wants to share, the chat is open at any point of time. Before we dive into the rest of the section, I'll just leave a few moments in case anyone would like to either unmute, come on camera, or share in the chat what got you curious about this specific workshop or presentation. Is there something about the title or something about the description that made you interested, that got you curious as to wanting to stay on for this presentation? So do let me know before we move on to the next part, and I'll leave a few moments of silence, because it's always great to hear from you, to know what got you curious here, and also what your intention is for coming for this particular presentation. So you're welcome to unmute. You're welcome to use the chat if you wish. You're also welcome to come on video. Of course, no obligation. I know it's pretty late for many of you, your time, so you might prefer to stay with your video off.
If you have any difficulty unmuting or getting your video started, maybe you could put something in the chat. I know I've had some technical issues here. But I also know it's late and you're shy and you're tired. So we'll go with that. I'll give you a little more minute, another minute, Wenlin.
Yes, that sounds great. Okay, great. We've got a comment from an iPhone user, and the comment is interest in better understanding the 5 elements and the creative cycle. That sounds like a great point to start, and that's actually going to be the heart of the presentation. And then later on, depending on the various different questions that may come up, I will spend a little bit more time focusing on various different areas. This presentation actually originally, when it was presented at the Qigong Summit, virtual Qigong Global Qigong Summit earlier this year, focused on women's health. And today, because I believe we might be of various different genders and backgrounds, it is more centered around the general 5 elements and the creative cycle and less on women's health. But towards the end, if you do have questions, if you are identifying as having as a woman and you want to find out more about how this relates to your physiology and your, for example, menstrual cycle or your women's cycle, then you are welcome to, of course, leave a comment in the chat, and I will spend a little bit more time explaining and also sharing further resources that you can then explore in your own time. Okay, so it sounds good. Sounds like we are on track. So I am a big fan of learning through experience rather than really diving into the theory. And I believe that also in Qigong and various different practices, we have the concept of yin yang, which is this idea of two equal and opposing forces that underpin everything. And I believe one of the ways of exploring yin yang is this idea of theory versus practice. So theory is understanding how it works, logically what it is, the science behind it. And then the other aspect is the actual practice. So actually doing the practice, feeling and sensing within ourselves what this practice is to us, what it means to us, and how it feels, and the benefits of this practice that can't be described using scientific, for example, research or clinical studies. So before we dive in, briefly, the 5 elements are 5 different forces. And because Qigong is a centuries old discipline, it is actually rooted in the philosophy of Taoism. And of course, even if I had an hour, I would not be able to share the full story of Taoism and how it came about and the richness of this ancient philosophy. But simply said, Taoism was practiced by the shamans centuries ago, and it came about as a way, actually originally, to transcend mortality, to live a long and perhaps, for example, eternal life. Now, whether we can live an eternal life, I'm not sure within my lifetime I'll be able to answer this question. But what we have found out through this Taoist philosophy is that there is this concept or this belief that everything in life is driven by the pulsating forces of these 5 moving forces. It's called Wu Xing in Chinese, but very often it's translated as elements. And here we have on this image the 5 elements. Wood, that when we chop wood, it gives rise to fire. This is fuel for fire. In the ashes of fire, we find soil. And in the soil, we can find various different precious minerals and metal. And then on the surface of metal, or using metal, we can then forge containers, we can forge various different things, which can then on the surface condense or contain water. And water again feeds wood, and this is the entire cycle of the 5 elements. So now it may seem rather abstract, or it seems like, how does this 5 elements relate to our daily lives? It seems very separate from our daily lives. And I've always been thinking about this since I started studying Qigong, Taoism, as well as this Asian philosophy. How does the 5 elements actually apply to our daily lives? And why should I even care about them? You know, it doesn't seem very tangible. So the truth is, each of these 5 elements are not objects. They are actually forces or different kinds of energy, and we can actually feel them during the different times of the day, different times of the year, as well as different times of, for example, our lifetime from the moment we are born until the moment we pass on our mortal life, as well as during our projects as well. Later on, I'll elaborate more about this because I believe that many of you who came here, you are mindfulness practitioners. You might also associate yourself as being someone who is quite creative. So you might have various different pursuits, whether that is in your career, in your personal life, in your creative projects. So later on, I'll share a little bit more about how these five elements actually apply and relate to various different stages when we start a project, when we run a business, when we experience our lives. But for now, what I want to invite you to do is we're going to actually experience these five elements through a very simple yet powerful breathing exercise that will also stimulate your vagus nerve. Now, this breathing practice actually doesn't come from Qigong, and I am a huge fan of um, blending various different practices and understanding and seeing the synergies between them. So I must give credit to this practice as being a practice originally from the lineage of yoga and yogic philosophy. So this practice is called samavriti, which is called equal fluctuation or box breathing. Some of you, if you are a practitioner of yoga, you may already be familiar with this practice, or perhaps if you've worked in a setting where you are supporting patients or other people to regulate their nervous system, you might already know this. So this practice works with the vagus nerve, which is the longest nerve in the body, connecting the brainstem to the various different vital organs, such as your heart, your lungs, the rest of your body, to tone this vagus nerve so that you can regulate your nervous system, so that if and when we're in overdrive, for example, we are being triggered into that fight, flight, or freeze kind of state, then we can transition back into that state of calm, which is rest, digest, relax. So from a sympathetic nervous response into a parasympathetic nervous response. And it does so by regulating the phases of your breath. So before we start, I want to invite you to come into a comfortable, seated, lying down position, whatever feels supportive for you. You might notice first the ground or the surface beneath you supporting you. Can you feel the contact of maybe your sit bones, your legs, whatever point of your body is being held by the earth? As you notice those points of contact, could you, as you exhale, begin to release the weight of your body down? Let's try that again. So we'll inhale to welcome a feeling of spaciousness. And then we'll exhale to relax and release the weight of your body down. You can yield or even take a great big sigh. One last time, breathing in, feeling this expansion. And then breathing out to yield the weight of your body down. So now that once you've really settled in and you've grounded, you've rooted, you've allowed yourself to land, I want to invite you to notice the four seasons or the four phases of your breath. You might be familiar with your inhales. This is when the breath comes in, the lungs expand. And then there is a very slight pause after the inhale on fullness, where the breath is full and you are holding in that fullness. Then there is your exhalation, where the lungs contract and the breath leaves your lungs. And then again, at the end of this exhalation, there is a very slight pause where you feel this void, this liminal space, this emptiness that can be again filled with potential. So these are the four seasons of your breath. Your inhalation, this rising energy, and this retention, which is this fullness. There's the exhalation, where the breath leaves your body, the contracting energy. And then there is the suspension, when there is emptiness. Notice the 4 phases of your breath. So at this moment, there's nothing to do aside from observing these 4 phases of your breath. You might also notice if one phase is longer or shorter than the other. You might notice if one part of this breathing feels more natural, more at ease, more instinctive for you, and perhaps one phase feels less natural, or it feels more contrived, it feels a little bit more difficult. Observe and notice what there is to notice. Now, you're very welcome to stay observing these 4 phases of your breath. The next option, as we begin this breathing exercise, is we will start to inhale for 4 counts, hold the breath on fullness for 4 counts, exhale for 4 counts, and then hold on emptiness for 4 counts. So this will then form the box where we inhale up and we hold the breath across the horizontal line, and then we exhale towards the end, and then we hold that emptiness. So this draws a complete square box, as I have here, this coaster. So inhale up, holding the breath, exhaling down, and then holding that emptiness. If 4 breaths is too long, you can also try with 3 breaths. In fact, let's try with 3 breaths first. So let's take a normal breath in and a regular breath out. A regular breath in and a regular breath out. One last one, regular breath in and a regular breath. Now we'll inhale for 3, 2, 1. Hold, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 3, 2, 1. 3 more rounds. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 3, 2, 1. Last round. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 3, 2, 1. Gently release the technique and notice the effects on this breathing pattern of drawing this box or this square, having these equal fluctuations of 3 inhales, 3 breaths of retention, 3 breaths of exhale, and 3 breaths of this suspension. And notice how it feels to be here now in this box, in this breath, in this cycle, and in this flow. Now, some of you might already be thinking there are 4 seasons of the breath and 4 phases, but the presentation is called The Power of the Creative Cycle and the 5 Elements. And you are absolutely right. So you might already be wondering, where's the 5th element? So let me, before I move on, answer the question, and I will share my slides again. So just now, what we experienced was a very simple yet profound and also intuitive way of experiencing the five elements. And we also see this in our daily lives with the shifting energies of the day. So let's start with sunrise, or the start of the day, or the start of your breath. So when we take in your breath and we inhale, this rising and expanding energy is the energy of the wood element. Whenever we start something new in the planning phase, when we're strategizing, when we're um, going to make it happen, but we didn't quite do it yet. So we are doing everything that is necessary to allow something to happen. This is the wood element. And this is when we breathe in and we take in what is necessary. Then, upon the fullness, you might have felt, oh, my lungs are so full, and I really feel this lungs pushing against the sides, and I feel this fullness of the breath. This is the energy of the fire element and the energy of summer. When everything is in fullness, and when we create a project, when we run a business, when we have a relationship, this is when we are fully engaged in making, in creating, in letting things happen. And this is when the action taking actually happens in the creative cycle. Then what happens is a contraction. So after this fullness, right, we can't hold in the breath forever, and we have to let go. So after taking in and enjoying and feeling that fullness, we let things go. And this is a very important phase in life. Some of us cannot let go. And this is when we struggle with the inner critic. Those of us who are menstruating or have ever menstruated, this is the phase of PMS, premenstrual phase. Those of us undergoing perimenopause or who have ever undergone perimenopause, the metal element is the natural place and space of the inner critic. And when we experience this perfectionism, this inner criticism, that's associated with the metal element, this contracting energy, as we turn inwards into ourselves and we withdraw and start to set boundaries between what is me and what is not me, identifying between what is truly precious and what needs to be let go of. So that's the metal element. And then that last gap of emptiness, when we take that pause, and you might notice that I called it this liminal space, or this suspension, this void, this emptiness. This is the energy of the water element. When we flow downwards, we connect with the source, we surrender and let go, and we turn into ourselves deeply, into a deep state of surrender and connection with something much greater than ourselves. That is the energy of the water element. And the fifth element, the earth element, energetically, in terms of directions, it has always been in the center. And also in terms of the seasons, as well as the times of the day, you might read in specific Chinese medicine texts, as well as, for example, if you go and see an acupuncturist, a Qigong master, some of them may tell you that the earth element is experienced during the season of late summer, during the time of day of golden hour, which is that transition between the fire and the earth element. But the true position of the earth element is in all transitions. When we move from one phase to the other, that small shift, just like within the times of the day, when sunrise moves to midday, that transition. And then from midday, it moves to sunset, that transition. From sunset towards midnight, that transition once again. And same thing for the four seasons. Same thing for your lifetime. Same thing for when you're creating a project, running a business, having a relationship. It is this energy of returning to center, of consolidating, transmuting, and transforming what you have received from the previous stage, that season, that cycle, so that you can harness that and bring that with you into the next cycle. So this is a brief introduction, a little bit more less concrete. And in a moment, I will go into the more concrete aspects of it. But I wanted to give you a feel of this energetically, of how the five elements are, and we can all experience this in our daily lives. So we've already done the breathing exercise and you really experienced it now. And this is what I mean by when we look at the four seasons, you might be able to sense and feel them. And really, Earth is always in the center. It is both. We are on Earth, quite literally, but at the same time, Earth signifies this returning to center energy, that we never depart too far from who we are and where we are, and we always come back to the center, returning to where we departed from. Okay, so let's look at the creative cycle process. So my work is I do a lot of work in supporting change makers, leaders in organizations, creative people, such as, for example, designers, artists, mindfulness practitioners, as well as entrepreneurs, to help them find flow and also harness the energy of the creative cycle. Because my big belief is that we are surrounded by energy. And probably if you've ever practiced Qigong, if you've ever experienced something greater than yourself, you will know that you are not alone and we are not alone. We all have different energies and we influence each other. And perhaps the biggest source of energy is our environment. This is why various different practices like feng shui, it actually affects our energies. Qigong itself is a way of cultivating and balancing the five elements. And my work is really around breaking down and making more simple this creative cycle process. So I mentioned at the beginning that each of these five elements, it actually gives birth, or it actually feeds into the next element, and then it creates this seamless cycle. And in traditional Chinese medicine, if you've ever gone to an acupuncturist, or maybe you are a Qigong practitioner, you will probably know that this is called, often translated as the birth cycle or the creation cycle, the Sheng cycle. Sheng means to give birth. And I like to call it the creative cycle because it is a creation process. And every time we loop into this creation cycle, what we're doing is we're solving problems and we're creating something new. So it actually is pretty creative. So at the start of every single process, whether you are maybe planning to go abroad, or maybe you are deciding to move from one city to the other, or maybe you are planning a moving mindfulness summit such as this, we all start with a vision. And this vision comes from something much greater than ourselves. And this is actually the water element where we source our ideas. If you've ever had the eureka moment or connection with your intuition and a deep knowing and insight that cannot be explained logically, just using the thinking mind, then you will know what it means to connect with the water element. This is where we can source our ideas. This is where we surrender and we connect with something much greater than our small selves. And from this connection with your heartfelt intention, with your ideas, then you start to think, okay, I have this idea for something I want to bring into the world. It is still only an idea in my head, but I want to realize it in the world. And so you start to strategize. You start to plan, you have a vision, you might create a vision board or a game plan, or you might begin to map out the steps that will help you realize this plan. And this is really the wood element at play when you start to have this expanding and rising energy. Once this plan feels ready and you are ready to take action, I heard someone, it was there a question? It seems like someone wanted to share something. Nadia, please go ahead. Nadia, did you have a question? I noticed you unmuted yourself. Okay, no worries. Feel free to express yourself if you do have a question. If not, I will mute you just for the purposes of the recording. And so then there's this phase of planning and visioning. And after we plan and vision, what happens is the actual execution, when we actually do something, so that from an idea in our heads, it becomes a manifest reality. We actually have a tangible product in a world or tangible service that now from an idea, we made it into reality. This is the process of doing. And this is really the fire element when we start to put things into play. Then what we have here, I mentioned, is the earth element. This bridges between all seasons, but within this creation cycle is right between the fire element and the metal element. And this is when we share our work, when we connect with others, when we receive feedback on this product, on this service, on whatever we've been working on. And we really start to begin to consolidate and celebrate as well, like transformation, celebration. We actually have a final output. We've given birth to this product, and there's actually output. And then the next phase, when that happens, after that happens, is we begin to look at this product, this service, this actual thing, or maybe our relationship, if we are looking for a romantic relationship, or our personal relationship with ourselves. And we're like, how am I doing in this cycle? Am I really happy with my growth, with what I've achieved so far in terms of the fruits of my labor? Is there something I can let go of? Maybe a self-limiting belief I want to let go of. Or for example, if it's an actual product, I might look at this product and see, oh, this feature doesn't seem to work very well. Or for example, in terms of the summit, or what are some of the positive aspects, or in terms of some of the aspects that could be improved for the next cycle. Then we start to identify what we want to keep, which is precious, and which is like the metal element that we then crystallize, and what is unnecessary, what is to be shed off, to be filtered, and to be let go of. And then we let it go, just like the autumn leaves shedding from the tree, so that then we can prepare for the next cycle, so that once again, we return to the source of ideas, we return to our heartfelt intention, and then we continue this entire cycle. So I've been speaking to people of various different industries, including people from technology who are very familiar with the product cycle. And essentially what we've mapped out here is the product cycle. When we launch a new product and we were doing prototyping, when we create a new business, when we start a relationship, this is also in general, the general process of how things unfold. So you might be thinking this is a helpful framework, but how does this apply to me? What are the tangible aspects? So let me share a little bit more about that. So there are various different qualities that we can embody throughout this entire phase. And for some of us, depending on our constitution and depending on our upbringing, some phases come more naturally and easily to us than others. So what I mentioned from before is really surrender. It's really connecting with this insight, intuition, a greater deep sense of trust. Wood is all about strategizing, planning, having that vision, being creative, having that agency to start something. Fire is really about executing and being authentic to yourself while you do and while you express yourself in the world. Earth element is really about assimilating, about self-reflection, about transforming. And then the metal element is really about discernment, about this idea of reflecting, being able to separate what is necessary versus what is peripheral, what is to be discarded, and this discernment, this refinement. So there are various different qualities, but let's move on to the next slide, and this will really dive into various different behaviors that we might be experiencing in our lives. So if you're feeling stuck in your life, if you're feeling uninspired, or for example, if you are avoiding something, or if you've been feeling fearful, chances are there is an imbalance or lack of water element in your constitution or in your environment, and that might be balanced out through a practice that helps you harness the 5 elements. The wood element, when out of balance, it surfaces or manifests in the form of lack of a clear vision or plan. You might procrastinate, you might take action, but not have any clarity, and you might feel confused. So these are some signs of imbalances in the wood element. And then with regards to the fire element, when you are taking action, what happens is you might suffer from imposter syndrome. You might feel that you don't actually really know what you're doing, and you often end up succumbing to social comparison. You might play small rather than really owning your true power, feeling confident, expressing yourself authentically. And then you might resort to uninspired action. And then as a result of this, what happens is in the earth element phase, you might be succumbing to overthinking. You might be over worrying with regards to your relationships, your work, yourself. You might be hiding yourself. You might feel unappreciated. These are all signs of the earth element when out of balance. So the earth element is really a giver, a mother. And when not appreciated, when not really in that center, what happens is this feeling of overwhelm, of worry, of this rumination. And then I mentioned this a little bit from before. The metal element is really about this idea of refinement. So when out of balance, it surfaces in the form of this struggle with the inner critic. Just a few weeks back, I released a new program called Harness the Inner Critic. So when the inner critic is actually in check, in balance, it can actually help us really dive into our deepest, darkest fears and release ourselves from these fears so that we can be the fullest versions of ourselves. And when out of balance, what happens is we are paralyzed and unable to move forward because we are so hypercritical of every single thing that we do, or, for example, of our relationships and the people we care about. So this is just an overview, and I know I'm moving quite quickly in interest of time, but all of this content can be found later on my website. I will share more information. So if you're ever curious about a particular phase or element, you can always find this information later on. I wanted to talk just very briefly about the 5 elements and also how they connect with our physiology and how this might manifest in terms of our emotions. So you can see here, this general cycle is the creative cycle or the creation cycle. And each of these 5 elements is governed by various different organs and energy channels in the body. You can see, for example, wood is associated with the liver and the gallbladder. So the liver is the yin organ, the gallbladder is the yang organ, and as well as the related energy channels. And it's all about planning and strategizing. So I won't elaborate too much on this, but I want to really bring you through the next one, which is really important. It's about the disruptive cycle, because very often what we think about is emotions. And I know that there's another presentation later on that is, as well as in this entire summit, that is about the emotions and how, for example, this relates to Qigong. So in the creation cycle, as well as the disruptive cycle, what happens is when these elements are out of balance, when these energies are out of balance, it can surface in the form of emotions. One example, as I mentioned from before, the water element is associated with the kidneys. And when we cannot trust in something greater than ourselves, when we don't have this sense of safety, what happens is we are afraid. So we don't take action and we are paralyzed. So this is one example. Another example is the wood element. So when we're unable to see clearly, when we feel that we don't have control and we are able to have this agency to create the kind of life we want to have, we might feel frustrated, we might feel angry, we might feel thwarted. So this is another example. Another example that often comes up when I speak to acupuncturists is this idea of grief and this association with the lungs. Many different acupuncturists I've spoke to have noted that various different patients who have experienced, for example, lung cancer, who have had, for example, a family member, they've lost a family member. What happens is as they are processing this grief, what comes up is then very often these respiratory related issues. So I find it very interesting. And even though, for example, we are still in the midst of understanding what Qigong really is and how it really works, and we are not quite there yet with regards to really understanding the meridian channels, the Jingluo, which underpin the science, so-called the science behind Qigong, we can already see various different connections between seemingly disconnected things. So really, the idea behind the creative cycle and what I'm sharing today about the 5 elements is an invitation to start to experience and feel how you might connect with something greater than yourself, rather than what you can see using your eyes or what we can prove using modern science. Because I believe that within each and every one of us, we have this inner GPS and we can sense and feel these energies in a very intimate and very intuitive way. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the values and the strengths, so I won't elaborate too much on this. You can find this information on my website if you are curious. I want to invite you to join me now, actually, for a moving meditation practice. So I'm going to stop sharing. It won't be too long. And also in the interest of time, I want to make sure that there's enough time for Q&A. So what we're going to do now is we're going to, if you will be joining me, come into a comfortable standing position. Later on, I will guide you through various different forms to really connect inwards. And at any point of time, if the practice that I'm offering you doesn't resonate, if it stirs up something that doesn't feel right, listen to your inner teacher. You might pause and observe. You might take a break. You might do anything else and trust yourself. So there is no better teacher than yourself. This is what I genuinely believe. This is what my first teacher told me as well. So we're going to come to stand, and I'm going to adjust the camera, and hopefully when I move backwards, it will still be in focus at any point of time. If you have any questions, if my video goes off, if it doesn't work well, feel free to let me know. Great, great. So we're going to start by letting our feet come hip distance apart. And probably you've already done this form many times today. We're going to come into the position of Wuji, which is limitless stance, with your feet hip distance apart, your shoulders relaxed, your knees soft, your arms gently down by the sides of your body. Notice how it feels to be in this position. And we're going to exhale to soften and relax all of the joint spaces in your body. Relax your shoulders, relax your wrists, all the tiny joint spaces in your fingertips, your palms. And then notice if any part of your body feels stiff, especially if you've been sitting all day through all the presentations or you're feeling quite tired. Take a moment to check in with yourself. And then we'll start by shifting your weight side to side. Notice how it feels as you shift your weight side to side. Maybe your weight is more towards one leg than the other. Perhaps you associate with being more logical than someone who is more creative. Maybe you are someone who is generally more action taking rather than more receptive, more passive or patient. Notice if that is the case. And as I'm doing this, I'm letting my knees be soft rather than shifting side to side and stretching the sides of your body. This is a slightly different movement. You can try this as well if you want to experience the difference. So the knees are soft and you are floating the weight from the center of one foot to the center between both feet and then all the way to the other foot. This is called the weight shift that we often do in Qigong sometimes, as well as in Tai Chi Chuan or Tai Chi, as it is often called in the West. You might be familiar with this movement. So the next time you shift your weight and find your center, remember the earth element is all about the center. Really let yourself release and yield the weight of your body down into the center. And then we're going to really harness the energy from the rainbow arches of your feet. Let your hands begin to swoop down and softly bend your knees. And as you breathe in, lift all 10 toes to feel the rainbow arches of your feet. Breathing in. And as you breathe out, spread all 10 of your toes and then let the palms gently settle down and reconnect with the earth. So deep breath in as we gather from the earth, reaching up. And let the breath fill your lungs, fill your heart, and then breathing out, slowly reconnecting and spreading your 10 toes. One last time, really rooting down. And you can go only as low as it feels good for you. And once we found that connection with all 10 of your toes, also find the inner corner of your heel and the outer corner of your heel and really root down through these points of contact with the ground. This is where we receive the support from the earth. Now let's take a couple of breaths and we're going to do what one of my teachers, my Qigong masters, calls spontaneous Qigong. We're going to move in any way that feels right for you. As long as you keep this connection with the earth, you can loosen up your joints, you can open your heart, you can explore the different planes, whether that is front or back, side, sagittal, any kind of movement that feels nourishing for you. especially if it's pretty late your time. Maybe you want to move in a very gentle and nourishing way. Perhaps the movements are very small rather than big. And maybe the movements are even intentional rather than exploratory, whatever feels right for you. And as you are moving, checking in with the different spaces, noticing maybe which organs feel like they need some nourishment, which sides of your body, which of the joints, the muscles, the ligaments, the tendons, or even the subtle layers of your body that need some care. So you're very welcome to continue moving in any way that feels right for you. And you're also very welcome to join me as we come back through the center. Relax your jaw as you come back to the center and roll the back of your head all the way up to the sky while relaxing your shoulders down and letting the fingers lengthen down. Very importantly, especially if you're new to the practice of Qigong, you're not familiar with the stance, one of the things we're going to do is to release the lower back through a movement called the pelvic tilt. So if you practice yoga, you might already know this movement through cat-cow. And we're going to do this in a standing position. So your knees are always soft. They're not collapsed in. Remember, we root down through the four corners of the feet. So when you breathe in, tilt the back of your pelvis and your tailbone, the sacrum. If you had a tail, it would reach backwards. And you feel the front of your body as well as the conception vessel begin to lengthen and stretch. And the back begins to contract. And when you breathe out, round and scoop it in, then you feel the opposite happening. The back lengthens and the front contracts. As you inhale, arch the spine. As you exhale, round and scoop it in. Let's keep going for a couple of rounds. Arch and round, arch and round. As you do this, notice that your hips, your knees, your ankles will gently move, but this movement is driven by the hips. So you feel this pelvic bowl tilting forward and back, tilting forward and back. And if this feels good, you are welcome to stay here. If you want to explore something a little bit more, you can also join me as we let the pelvic bowl begin to tilt forward, and then let the front of your hip begin to rise forward and up. And we start to draw hip circles. So down, forward, up, and back, mirroring the 4 seasons and the 5 elements. As you do this movement, see if you can relax your head, your neck, your spine. So you let this slinky movement through your spine from your hip move upwards along your lumbar spine, your thoracic spine, all the way up along your cervical spine, your neck, towards the crown of your head, but also downwards from the hips towards your thighs, your knees, calves, ankles, towards your feet. If I've lost you and this is too complex a movement, come back to the pelvic tilt, which is the most simple yet powerful movement we can do to release the lower back. And then the next time you let the last part of your spine, we call this the sacrum, for those of us who are less familiar with anatomy, we're going to let it tilt under just very slightly. So it's as if you're sitting on this imaginary high stool underneath your sit bones. And you let your shoulders relax down, and you let the back of your head lengthen up towards the sky, and you feel this spaciousness between your shoulders and ears. Relax your jaw, let the tip of your tongue come behind the back of your front teeth. And now we'll come into a spinal movement called spinal cord breathing. Let your hands form loose fists. As you breathe in, spread your collarbones, reach your heart up towards the sky, let your elbows draw back. And as you breathe out, round the spine, draw in. I like to gently begin to shine my heart forward as I breathe in. And I like to round my spine and bend my knees as I breathe out, looking into my belly button. See if that feels good for you. Or maybe you find your own way of moving through this form. This form helps to release all the vertebrae of the spine, enlivens the spine, which is really important. We know this from modern science, but also through various different lineages, whether that is Qigong or yoga. All of these sages, experts have acknowledged the importance of the spinal cord. So you're very welcome to continue with this form if this feels good. If you feel ready to join me as we transition to the next and the closing form before we wrap up, what we're going to do is to move through the phases of cultivating energy to harness the energy of the creative cycle. I'm going to walk you through the process. There are a few steps within the process, but it's a simple yet very profound and powerful form. So firstly, let the palms gently settle down, facing downwards. Relax the shoulders. Allow a bit of space between the sides of the arms and the sides of the ribs. We start by letting the palms begin to gather energy. So the palms move towards each other, and then the hands rise. So rising energy. Then they move apart while facing each other, expand and contract. Palms move towards each other. Then the back of the palms move towards you. So the wrists and the back of the palms move inwards towards you as you move towards your palms. And then it moves outwards away from you. And then gently it descends and dissipates. Let's try that again. So we gather, rise, expand, contract, coming in, moving out, descending, and dissipating. Gather and rise, expand, contract, draw in, move out, descend, and dissipate. If you found the flow, keep going. If you are needing a bit more guidance, I will continue to be here to walk you through the process for the next couple of rounds. So we gather with the hands float up, and you open the hands sideways, expand, and you let them contract inwards. And then the back of the palms moves towards the chest, and then it moves away, creating space. And then the palms move down, and then gently you let this energy dissipate back to the earth. Gather, rise, expand, contract, coming in, moving out, descending, and dissipating. Let's try this just 2 more rounds. I'm here as a visual reference. If you found your flow, follow your own rhythm, your own pace, which could be faster or slower than me. And then when you come to the end of that very last round, we're going to do a 3-part exercise to close this moving meditation practice. This practice is called pulling from the heavens, and one of my teachers transitioned to call it clearing, filling, and sealing it in. So as you inhale, we're going to gather everything you want to clear out from your system, from your life. That might be self-limiting beliefs. It might be relationships that no longer serve you, old ideas, anything holding you back. Fill to the brim and let your hands reach upwards as a gesture, a metaphor, or symbolism for all of this you want to let go of. And then as you breathe out, let the hands from the top begin to clear out from your system like a pump, letting it gently be sent from you back down into the earth. And she who is the earth, who is so good at taking what we don't need and transforming it into something that supports all of the organisms. And now we've cleared out what no longer serves you. We're going to fill to the brim with everything you're looking forward to. Maybe in the season of autumn, in winter, and beyond. maybe in the coming year, the coming decade, or for the remaining years of your life, fill to the brim. And then as you exhale, let this enter into your system. Let it saturate your consciousness. And then one last round, sealing it in. The intention is the most important. And in Qigong, often you will hear where the intention goes, the energy flows. It comes from 意道, 气道, from Chinese, which is where the intention is. And you will find that energy is there, the breath is there. So this time, really connecting with your heartfelt intention, whatever brought you to this summit, whatever transformation and change you are hoping to effect in yourself and in the people around you in the world, let that intention guide you as you root in that intention, trusting and knowing that you are on the right path and you have the tools, you have the connections, you have the confidence, the power necessary so that you can do what you would like to do and realize your dreams, the change, that transformation. And then gently and slowly, we rest one palm on top of the other, about 3 fingers below the belly button. If it feels good, you can let your eyes gently close for a moment, consolidating this energy, consolidating the fruits of your labor, what you've harvested from this summit. Maybe not even just from this presentation, but from the last couple of workshops you've already sat through, you've been taking notes on, you've been reflecting on. Take a moment to let all of these fruits of your labor begin to be harvested. And then gently and slowly, if and when you feel ready, letting your eyes blink open. And I like to close by letting the palms come together in front of the heart center and let your head bow slightly down towards your heart, acknowledging heaven, earth, and the heart, the 3 levels of existence, and everyone and everything that made it possible for you to be here today. So thank you so much for joining for this moving meditation. We have a couple of more minutes for some Q&A. So I would love to maybe hand back over to Donna if Donna would like to.
This was lovely. This was so lovely. And just when I thought I've heard it all, there's more. And you have added a whole nother dimension, this idea of creativity and these cycles. It's brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. And I am looking forward to seeing this video again. This is something I'm going to have to revisit. But what I'd like to do is open it up now to anyone else who would like to ask a question. We have a few more minutes. I'll just take a minute to invite you to unmute if you want to ask a question or thank Nadia. We do have iPhone here with us again. I'm going to let him take the stage.
It was a very nice presentation, and this idea of the cycles of breath related to the 5 elements, I think, is very interesting. So the question is the following. You have the creative cycle, and then you have the control cycle. Is the creative cycle in a sort of yin and yang relationship with the control cycle? In the other sense, if the creativity goes too much, you have to control it by the control cycle, or the control cycle is not really seen in a dual relationship, like complementary to the creative cycle?
This is an excellent question. And I'm a huge believer that there are no right or wrong answers. From my own personal experience, I do see that there is this balance between the control and the creative cycle. And probably it sounds like some of us are very advanced practitioners, so you might have through your own experience, or maybe if you're an acupuncturist, if you have an imbalance in a specific element and you go and see an acupuncturist or a holistic medicine practitioner who is well-versed in the 5 elements, they will use the control cycle to help to counter these imbalances. And that is one very direct and very powerful way to do that. Yeah, so for sure, with my clients as well, when, for example, they're experiencing various different emotional imbalances, or it's showing up in their life through their relationships or their career, the control cycle is definitely something I use as a tool to manage these imbalances. So thanks for raising this excellent question. Yeah.
Thank you.
He's the plant. He's always raising good questions. He's been wonderful. He's been asking the powerful, intuitive, and thoughtful questions. So I hope he stays with us for the next workshop as well, because they're wonderful. Anybody else with a question?
I think you're one of the first people that I've encountered that, described the creation cycle almost identically the way I do. So that's really fun for me to listen to your presentation, because I was like, as soon as you started, I was like, oh, hey, I better listen in.
And the graphics are fantastic. So I have 9:16. I think we have to sign off here. I'm going to invite everyone to unmute. Now, unmuting has been iffy all day here. So if you can unmute and would like to give your thanks to the lovely Wenlin and her beautiful information that she shared, I encourage you to do so. I will begin to put you back into the waiting room for our last presentation by Paul Wang, Emotional Alchemy for Mental Health, which I think is going to be a really important thing for us to listen to and a great way to end our conference. So Nadine or Nadia or Karen or Caroline or Carlos, anyone would like to say something, please do so as I say goodbye to Wenlin. Hope I see you again next year, and I will be following you. And if you want to have a conference where you live, please let me know. I'll show up. We've talked about that. Anyway, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
having
Wenlin.
me. Thank you. Thank you to all of you who have been here. We can stay connected. If you would like to find out more, you can always head over to my website, wenlintan.com.
And I will put her links in the recordings and the schedule that I will be sending to everyone. Please make sure you've registered so I know that you're on the list. It's free. Just sign up and let me know.